Welcome to the Nonprofit Edge, a podcast series to promote purpose in practice. Each week, this webinar series features an extraordinary individual that provides valuable and impactful services, helping to transform the capabilities of their nonprofit clients. Join us as we explore a variety of topics, all vital to the success of nonprofit organizations. Learn and grow from the experience and expertise of our featured guests. Without further delay, let's introduce you to the host of the Nonprofit Edge podcast series, Chris Looney.
Hey, welcome to the show, everyone. We're glad you joined us. Today on the Nonprofit Edge, we're joined by Neil Shah, founder of Altruva.ai, and a seasoned nonprofit CEO who has worked with more than 100 organizations across the sector. Neil combines deep financial expertise with a forward-thinking approach to technology. His company, Altruva.ai, is helping nonprofits harness artificial intelligence to make smarter financial decisions, improve efficiency, and stay mission-focused in an increasingly data-driven world. So in our conversation, Neil's going to unpack what every nonprofit CEO needs to know about the intersection of AI and finance, including where to start, what pitfalls to avoid, and how to prepare your organization for the future. So welcome to the show, Neil, and thanks for joining.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn a little myself because admittedly, this is not a topic that I have a lot of experience or expertise in. So I will be joining the audience in this opportunity to learn more and sharpen some skills in this particular realm. So let's set the stage first.
Yep.
And why don't you tell us briefly a little bit about your background and
Yep.
what inspired you to launch Altruva?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So I've spent the majority of my career working with nonprofit organizations, sort of exclusively, about 20 years, just over 20 years, working with small, independent public charter schools, very, very small organizations to very large organizations, multi-state, in hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. And so I've seen, the small and the large, and I've seen all of them provide such great programs to their various constituents and communities. But I've also seen so many of them be resource strained, and especially in the areas of finance and operations, when we have a lot of manual processes in our nonprofit finance teams, when we have outdated tech stacks. There's only so much you can do. And we're always trying to do more with less, and the less just keeps getting harder and harder, right? As the costs keep going up, fundraising gets harder and harder to raise. How do you continue to invest in these important, essential areas like finance, when in a world where all of your various divisions and programs need investment? And it's important to have that strong financial infrastructure and operations, but at the same time, like, how do you balance that versus everything else that you have? And so being a fractional CFO, an interim CFO, an in-house CFO for so many different types of a consultant for so many different types of organizations, I saw an opportunity with AI this year to start to potentially leverage this just incredible game-changing technology that's out there now, to be able to maybe potentially automate some of these manual processes that so many nonprofits have, to maybe gain efficiencies with the use of AI without having to upgrade your entire finance tech stack, which can be, 6 figures, 7 figures sometimes, and so much change management across an organization. And so if you can use AI to find those efficiencies and reduce some of that manual work, maybe make your finance team a little bit smaller, and maybe not have to, hire more finance people as you are growing. And if you do need to maybe find efficiencies or reduce your FTE count in finance, maybe you can upskill some of the current staff members into more value-added types of roles, or retrain them into programmatic areas so that you're maybe creating a situation where it's win-win. So I started investigating that early this year. I'm not a tech guy by any means. It's all relatively new for me, but I'm coming from the CFO lens, and I'm bringing these potential products that are coming out in terms of AI agents that can automate some of this work. It's been exciting, but it's been a huge learning opportunity for me as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, you've worked with so many nonprofits as a CFO in a variety of capacities. How have you seen financial management evolve over the last decade?
The tools have definitely gotten better. I think, 10, 15 years ago, uh, people were using outdated, older licenses of Excel. Google Sheets really wasn't fully there yet. I think a lot of nonprofits have embraced either the Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Office type of ecosystem or the Google ecosystem. And I think a lot more are working with the Google. And so with Sheets and Docs, they've definitely become a lot better. So I think the Google Sheets functionality to create budgets and financial analysis has gone a lot better over the last 10 years. And of course, Excel has as well. Before that, I think it was limited for the ability to be able to create like very complicated models. I think the most experienced sectors were the for-profit sectors that are able to have the right skill set in humans to be able to leverage what was available at that time. But I think the tools have become so much more easier to use now that you don't need people that have been using Excel for 10 or 20, 30 years to be able to leverage some of the opportunity to be able to create models and things like that. So the tools are definitely better. The financial softwares, the accounting systems, these have all gotten a little bit better over the years. Of course, you're seeing more organizations start to leverage fund accounting types of softwares like Sage Intacct beyond just the standard QuickBooks, which is still the mainstay for the majority of organizations. But a lot of times, I think over the last 10 years, there's been opportunities where you can scale up beyond QuickBooks as you grow as an organization. You don't necessarily have to stay on QuickBooks when you start to get very, very large revenue set figures. So I think technology in general has gotten better, and I think nonprofit leaders have begun to embrace much more of the ability and the need to be able to plan a lot more on the long term, and how do you make the best effort planning in terms of like what you can fundraise and where you can spend those dollars down strategically for your organization, and how to find the right financial skill set. And I think financial operations has also gotten a big attention point for CEOs. In the sense of like having that strong audit protocols and internal controls and having checks and balances and all these things are very, very important because when you have those lax systems, it becomes very easy for fraud to occur, unfortunately, and systems to kind of break down. And so I think these things as they, and unfortunately, when bad stories like that kind of happen, it kind of opens the eyes a little bit more and more to need to have strong ops and strong, planning overall with finance.
Yeah. And then sort of like, well, in hindsight, maybe we should have spent a little more time, effort, money in this area to
exactly
reduce the pain we're feeling now, right?
Right.
That's amazing. Well, let's jump into the AI finance context because it is relatively new. And I know when nonprofit leaders hear AI, they often think of chatbots or fundraising automation. That's where it's sort of been most in vogue for the nonprofit world so far. But how does AI specifically apply to the finance function at this moment?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Whenever we go on a website now, you can, click on a chat bot in the right corner there and be able to chat with an AI for when you're trying to learn about a service or whatnot. I think in the nonprofit space, fundraising, like you said, has definitely taken the lead there. The opportunity to be able to, fill out grant applications that much faster or automate thank you notes or just do donor research. I think there are a lot of tools that are out there right now. I think from the finance lens, it hasn't been fully embraced yet, and I think part of it is also like the organizations that are creating AI automation opportunities for organizations are not yet focused on the nonprofit sector or exclusively for the nonprofit sector. I'm an exception coming from the nonprofit world, but I think there are a lot of organizations out there that are creating automation tools that big for-profit organizations, S&P 500 companies, are starting to use to automate various functional tasks in finance, whether coming from automating your invoices, is having your invoices entered in automatically, and then having a human then approve the invoices for payment, automating journal entries and bank reconciliations, all of those manual types of tasks that are very necessary to ensure that you have clean books, but are unfortunately very manual. So I think there are a lot of organizations that are automating that, providing automation opportunities for larger organizations, for-profit organizations. There are accounting systems now that are becoming AI native, where it is AI from the beginning, and all of the various work that's happening inside that ERP system or that accounting system is AI. And so I think there are a lot of opportunities for the organizations that have a lot of resources to put into that. For the nonprofits, though, it's not there yet. There are tools that nonprofits use today that have AI functionality in them. Some, so like if you use Salesforce, there's now Agentforce, and you can have AI agents inside your Salesforce. QuickBooks now has agents. So if you have QuickBooks Online, there's a finance AI agent and an accounting agent that you can use there. And so they're beginning to some of the softwares are being AI is being included in there, but they're not exclusively for nonprofits. They're just generally for any organizations that's using them. But when it comes to like how organizations are actually using AI to automate some of these finance functions, I'm seeing everything from creating cash flow forecasts, automating those invoices, like I mentioned, helping to reconcile accounts receivable, and that would be applicable maybe for the nonprofit world in terms of learning how behind we are with donors that have pledged money but they haven't received it yet, or how outdated are we, and how do we help collect or remind donors that they need to send in their pledge. And so accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash flow forecasting, accounting, organizations with resources are starting to really lean in on either finding AI agent solutions or upgrading their tech stacks to be able to start to begin to automate some of these various functions. Because I think that's the world we're going to be living in pretty soon. And it's hard for all of us to kind of imagine a world where 2028, 2030, that a lot of the accounting, a lot of the accounts payable will be done by AI agents and not by humans. And that's the case for large organizations, but it's also the case for nonprofits. And I think when nonprofits begin to recognize that and be able to begin to embrace that, you can stay ahead of the curve, because it's, I said it once in a recent LinkedIn post, AI is coming. And so it's either you embrace it now or you get run over by it later. And I think that being able to be ready for it, I think is important. Be able to embrace it is important. And we can talk through like various strategies that nonprofits and tactics that nonprofits can use, but it's beginning to become much more finance. All of the various functions that have a lot of manual work to it are ripe for opportunity when it comes to AI agents, and organizations are taking a lot of advantage of that.
So one of those kind of processes that seems to me would take a lot of time and traditionally would have been a manual process would have been auditing sort of, let's say you have gifts that you've recorded, but then you got to make sure that they actually hit the bank account, right? So cross-referencing, let's say, what you have in your CRM as gifts matches what actually came into the bank, right? And so that your revenue matches all of that stuff. And in the past, that would have been just a couple spreadsheets matching up and checking a box and saying, okay, everything matches, and here's the end net result. We're up or down or even, everything matches, right? And now I suppose you can completely automate that step pretty easily, I would guess, right? And that's probably a simple example. And maybe you have some others that are just some sort of early wins, easy things in finance that nonprofits can do to lighten their load, to use technology to make their life a lot easier.
Yeah, you nailed an excellent point, Chris, about the systems. And the systems not talking to each other. And so I've seen so many different nonprofit organizations that have spent a lot of time and money in implementing Salesforce and implementing Workday and implementing Sage Intacct and all these very great systems for accounting and budgeting and tracking your private grants and your earned revenue and such. The problem is a lot of times these systems don't talk to each other. And so when they don't talk to each other, you have to take data that's in Salesforce, download that data, take data from your accounting system, download that data, and do exactly what you said. They auto match, that's a human doing that work. And I've seen small organizations do that. I've seen very large, $100 million plus organizations having to have people dedicated in their job description to be able to do this manual work. The opportunity with organizations that can kind of focus and understand those nonprofit challenges, that exact workflow, which is a need to do, the opportunity to be able to not have to, either buy the connectors that connect the data and then maintain that, because there's a piece around implementing that, and then there's also a piece around maintaining that. But having those two pieces of great technology and software, but the opportunity for AI to understand both And so understand nonprofit finance, nonprofit accounting, but understand what's in Salesforce, understand what's in your QuickBooks or your Sage Intacct, and do exactly what you said and be able to automate those two. I think is a huge, huge opportunity for nonprofits to be able to lean in, to be able to understand what is in Salesforce, which is probably the most like up-to-date information on your data, on your vendors, on your donors and your the people at the foundations and such that are donating money, but then what's in your accounting system, which is the true like accounting's record keeper, and being able to kind of cross those two together and reconcile those two together, I think is a huge opportunity for sure. And I think those are solutions that are coming out to market right now. That's something that we're working through as well. And how do we provide that kind of solution to nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I mean, are there other just very basic finance tasks that every nonprofit CEO or even people in finance in the nonprofit space, which, some are very sophisticated and others are
Mm-hmm.
not, like
Mm-hmm.
what are the basics right now that
Yeah.
everyone should be incorporating or thinking about, on like some granular examples?
Yeah, yeah. I think most of us are familiar with at least using ChatGPT from a personal perspective, and maybe some of us use it in our nonprofit organizations as well. And so I think beginning to leverage AI chatbots like ChatGPT and Gemini, Google Gemini, these types of softwares to understand your data a little bit more, and then have it start to create things for you that you can use. And so one example is a forecast. And so whether it be your budget forecast or whether it be your cash flow or maybe a combination of both. And so we
Yep.
all have an annual budget. We create an annual budget. We have our board approve the annual budget, and then we're supposed to track that against throughout the year, our actuals versus our budget, right? The opportunity to be able to take that data and what you've spent, what your budget is for this year, what you've spent so far this year, and then be able to reforecast what the ending is going to be based on the spending that's already occurred this fiscal year or last fiscal year, or being able to look at your last 12 months of spending, and be able to forecast out what your cash flow is going to look like in the next 12 months. I mean, these are all
Amazing. Yeah.
functionality that you can do today, right now. You can do that in ChatGPT. You got to know A, what data to put in, and B, how to ask it. So like there's a prompting piece of that. What you have to be careful of is what data you're sending over to ChatGPT, right? Because when you send over their data, your data to them, they have it. It's theirs now, right? And so what you send or what information you provide there, I think is really, really important. But being able to take the data that you have and be able to use it to be able to help the planning for the future is one very tactical way. Or nonprofits today, right now, could get value out of ChatGPT, not just for recipes and all this amazing stuff that it does for our personal lives, but for our organizations and be able to help plan that. Another area I think is helping with financial analyses for the board and for the finance committees, and the opportunity to be able to look at what you're going to present to your finance committee. So let's say it's the last quarter's budget versus actuals and balance sheet, and have it create an analysis for you and it creates slides for you. I mean, it sounds pretty straightforward, but I think there's a lot of nonprofits that still don't know that you can give AI a couple of examples of what you've done in the past in terms of slides for your finance committee, and give it new data, and then kind of work through it. And you might have to go through a few iterations, but have it create that analysis and those slides for you, so that you can just take that, put it into your theme that you use for your organization, and boom, it's done. It probably saves you a couple hours at least of work every single month.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you for sharing some of those practical examples, and forcing us to remember that just because you haven't used these tools in the
Mm-hmm.
past for these things, you need to start building that into your psychology, right? It's just like
Right.
give it a shot. You think it's too tough, test whether
Mm-hmm.
that AI tool is capable of doing it,
Exactly.
and it might take a few times, but
Yeah.
over the course of not too long, you'll probably together figure out how to make it work,
Exactly.
and it'll be better
Exactly.
than and faster and more
Yeah,
correct.
what I try to say is that experiment, of course, and just use the concept of baby steps. Like try a little bit, try test something out, see what how well it responds. It's not going to be perfect. Like you bring on a new human employee, right? To our it's day one, and you're onboarding them. They're not going to get everything right the first day. They're not going to get everything right day 5. They're not going to get everything right day 365, right? But they're going to learn. They're going to get better. And in this case, the AI is getting better, but you're also going to get better in terms of how you instruct the AI to do what you need it to do. So it's experimenting. It's those baby steps, just getting a little bit more comfortable with it. I think nonprofits, the adoption of AI is similar to the adoption of all of our various other technologies. I mean, there's a resource issue, so like finding the resources to be able to invest into it. With ChatGPT, like these types of AIs, you don't really need to, but if you're going to implement all new AI processes or agents, there might be costs sometimes to that. But I think too, it's we're very human centric, and so like we are probably more human centric as a sector than any other sector. And so thinking of technology as a person is a foreign concept, I think, and it's a hard concept to think about. But I think if we start to think about like these AI tools, these AI agents being probably the most valuable, most efficient tool we could ever bring into our organization to make our people's lives easier and our work and our mission more impactful. I think we think of it in that regard, and we can really start to leverage it for some really, really great things.
Yeah, well said. That's awesome. Well, let's talk about strategy and even some leadership implications. I'm wondering how a CEO should be thinking about AI's role, sort of in their organization's overall financial strategy. How would you be presenting that concept to a CEO about the ways that they should be layering in AI over financial strategy?
Yeah, I think it starts at the top. It starts with them, and it starts with them helping to get the organization comfortable with AI, and that's through various strategies, tactics, such as setting up an AI governance council, and so having several members of staff diversified by position and title. So you've got some leaders in there, you've got some people on the ground floor in there, and so you're getting a lot of voices and various perspectives. I think is really, really important. The job of that governance council is to help kind of determine the use of AI in the organization, what we're comfortable with using, what we're not comfortable using, what data we're willing to share, what data we're not willing to share, what we can do internally to get our data better and cleaner. And that's from a finance perspective, but that could be from an overall data governance perspective. And so an outcome of the governance council should be a value statement around AI, how we're going to use AI ethically, and then tactically an AI use policy that can come out and something that the leadership can review, that the board can sign off on, and so that everyone understands what we're going to use it for, what we're not going to use it for. And so I think that's really important, and the leader should push that. I think beyond that, it's implementing AI in the areas where we have the biggest pain points, where we feel we can make the biggest inroads. I always come in from the finance perspective because of my lens up from the CFO end, but from the finance end, my pain points that I've seen other CEOs face and be challenged with is how do we get our data faster, and so how do we get an answer to a question, how much did we spend last year on consultants? What's our 3-year spend rate on technology? Or getting reporting to our, external authorizers or to our board or to our funders. How do we get the more accurate reporting and better reporting out to them? How do we get better internal reporting across our various leaders and our divisions? How do we get our leaders trained better on just the overall budget ownership and financial ownership of not only their own line of work, their own portfolio, but the organization as well. And I think having the opportunity to be able to start to leverage AI to help make things a little bit more faster, more efficient, while still maintaining that accuracy. If you can have AI do the heavy work on the analysis, you could have the humans spend more time on the analysis and the studying and the educating and the meetings across organization team leaders and being able to be much more customer oriented. So you can have the people in finance spend more time with other humans across the organization because they're not sitting there just crunching numbers. You're making AI go and crunch all those numbers for you.
Yeah. Let's continue on this topic of pain points and where AI can be helpful. Like you mentioned a couple of examples and they were wonderful examples because those are hard things to do. Normally you need a trained analyst or someone very knowledgeable about finance or forecasting or whatever to do these things. And now you're kind of talking about on demand, asking a question and getting the answer and being able to share it out. So, what are some of those other painful things that happen in finance that you can see AI helping with either now or in the future?
Yeah. Uh, one example would be the one about the systems talking to each other. So having
Yep.
to download out of one system and having to download out of their system and have to just sit there on spreadsheets, kind of manually checking the work. I've seen
So,
many
so
examples
good.
of
Yeah.
that.
So
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
So true.
I think invoice entry has a big opportunity. It's very manual. If I've seen some organizations where they get invoices in the mail and still and they might scan them, but they still file them and keeping the paper file. So the opportunity to be able to get a little bit more paperless, but then taking if we're beginning to automate where we're asking vendors to email us invoices to invoices at your domain name. Right now you have still a human opening up that PDF, taking that PDF, downloading it, putting it in a folder, and then opening it up when it's time to enter invoices, and they're entering it into a system. So the opportunity to scale that function down and automate it in a way where when invoices are available, are received, they go into a queue, and then the AI has access to it, and the AI opens it up, that invoice, and then goes straight into your accounting system and it opens it up. And you keep controls around the fact that the AI should not be allowed to make the payment itself, right? So like once the invoices are entered in, a human in the loop, right? The concept of the human in the loop is very important because you want to make sure that there
Mm,
are humans at every stage of the AI process. And so the AI
that's
enters
helpful.
invoices, and then the human goes and approves it, right? And the human approves the payment. The human could go and make the payment. You could still have the AI go back and make the payment if you're comfortable doing that. And there are solutions today that provide those types of opportunities.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but having the human there, I think, is really important. And what happens is that as the AI learns from your past history of invoices and how things were coded, and then in the human in the loop process, you're helping the AI say, well, no, you made a mistake over here. It doesn't. This invoice doesn't go to this grant. It goes to this grant. So as you start to correct it a little bit better, just like you're fine tuning your prompts, you're getting the AI to learn, and that's the opportunity here where the AI is actually going to get smarter and smarter, and get better and better at your organization's context. That's really important. I think the same goes for things like the very manual process around downloading your bank reconciliation and somebody sitting there and reconciling it. And somebody in your organization does it unless you outsource, and the outsourced person is doing it. But somebody's reconciling your bank statement and taking what's in your bank and look, this check got cleared and this check got cleared and this check got cleared, and checking it in your
Of
accounting system.
course.
And so
Yeah.
having that automated, I think, is very, very will reduce a lot of time, but also be able to remove some of those manual processes. I think there's also opportunities where if an organization has a lot of employee reimbursements, a lot of credit card transactions, a lot of people using credit cards and maybe sometimes not always following the policies, how do you get them to follow the policies? And so when the AI sees things, so the AI, you have ChatGPT that is a very you ask it to do something and it does it for you, right? An AI agent is trained to do things in the background without you having to prompt it to do it. So it has instructions and it's just doing its thing. So it has instructions to open up your email with the invoices at and open up and enter an invoice. That's its instruction. That's what it will do. It can also work behind the scenes and just run internal audits constantly of all of your data. And so when it sees something that could be potentially fraudulent, if it sees a charge that goes beyond the policy that of the organization, it can flag. It can flag the controller, it can flag the CFO, it can flag somebody. Right now, a human has to sit there and download thousands of lines of transactions to
Yeah.
be able to study it to
Impossible.
see, what might be potentially fraudulent or what's not in the policy. Being an AI agent that's right for that, having the opportunity to just have it sitting there running that, the opportunity to reduce potential fraud and policy violations and things like that. I think there's AI for that right now too. So I think how do nonprofits begin to embrace it? I think starting small, and then with those baby steps, being able to test out another workflow, and maybe test out an AI agent in one area. And so as you start to get more and more comfortable, you get much more, you have an overall level of comfort that part of my finance team and maybe other parts of my organization will be human and AI agents at the same time.
Yeah.
And there may be humans that oversee other humans, but humans will also oversee AI agents as a part of their org structure. And I think that is what the future is looking like when it comes to AI.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think of all those things that you said, they all made sense to me. The thing that I hadn't anticipated that you said, which now seems just so important, is the human in the loop. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people just assume that with AI, you are able to do these things without the
Mm-hmm.
human um, approving the process or just giving a visual okay or checking to go on to the next step or whatnot. I think it's
Right.
essential that that's never lost in this, that there's always going
Hmm.
to be that need for the human to be in the loop. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Right.
But it also struck me that we're now getting into this concept of risk management as well when you
Hmm.
talk about all
Hmm.
these things, because I would imagine that we're having to deal with some very sensitive financial data that can be attributed to
Hmm.
people, and I can already see it's not sort of your social security number or your bank account number or your password going on the black,
Hmm.
market or whatever, from the internet. It's actually being sent there to through AI. And so
Hmm.
how is a um, sort of finance team or a nonprofit CEO or a leadership group working to kind of prevent that from happening? Where's the risk management side of things?
Yeah. Uh, so personally identifiable information (PII) I think is really, really important to protect. At Altruva, we're not looking at kind of automating some of the human resources and payroll functions. Although there is a lot of opportunity to reduce a lot of manual work there, I think the concern around PII is a real one. I think the concern around bias is another one that's really, really important when it comes to HR and interviewing and things like that. So we're kind of staying away from that
Oh,
aspect of it.
interesting. Okay.
There are companies that are tackling that space, but I just don't think that AI is there yet. So when it comes to like finance, I would never recommend any organization or any nonprofit to upload like any kind of personal like payroll registers and these types of things. You don't want to do that. I think it's information that generally either is somewhat public. You present to your board, you present information about your profit and loss, your budget, your audit, things like that. You can share a little bit more to AI in terms of like spending trends and things like that. But I wouldn't put human information in there, employee information, such like that. The only exception could be if, and there are opportunities, other organizations are kind of creating their own local large language model, so their own LLM, and so it's called a local LLM. And so
Okay.
what you do there is you sort of train your own ChatGPT to live on your own servers, and you fine tune it by training it specifically on your organization or your data or how you do things, your policies, all of that. And so if the data lives fully in your system and in your environment, and you have the LLM inside of that, I think that would be an acceptable case in terms of like using it to payroll, because it's all kind of in your system anyway, and it's not to like an extra. You're not sending it to ChatGPT or Google Gemini or whatever like that. So I think there's opportunity there for sure. I think some organizations are beginning to use that, but from the mainstay of like using a Google Gemini or ChatGPT, I would never recommend using PII. And you want to protect your data. You want to share the right pieces of data with the LLM to be able to give you the best answer possible, but you don't need to give it everything every single time. And I think when you take your P&L and your audit into ChatGPT and you upload it while you're asking a question about it, it's going to give you a great answer, but it's now going to have your audit, right? And it's now going to have that budget. It's going to have that as part of its training site. And you don't necessarily want to have to share all your information with all these large language models.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's pretty interesting to contemplate. Of course, I even with those language models that are embedded inside your own organization and your
Mm-hmm.
servers, obviously those things are still connected to the broader
Yeah,
internet somehow.
yeah.
So there's got to be a lot of
So
still
encryption
systems
and stuff
and
is still important. Yeah,
guardrails, right?
yeah,
So there's definitely that fear, I guess, that you would have. But you make a good point too, which is there has to be policies that
yeah.
employees, staff members follow so that no one makes a rookie mistake of uploading something that
Hmm.
they shouldn't, right? And maybe there needs to
Right.
be even stronger protections that prevent certain files, certain things to be downloaded. But can you repeat what you
Yeah.
said, PPI or PII? What can you just say that again? Because I'm not
Sorry.
familiar
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that concept.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. PII is personally identifiable information, and so that
Okay.
is, your social security number. That is your Yeah, that could be anything from your bank account to health insurance information or whatever, any of that type of data. And payroll registers have a lot of that, right? It has sometimes it's
Right.
like kind of listed in the register as your social security number sometimes, or maybe a partial of it. It's got some of your health insurance deductions. It's got some of that information that you don't necessarily want
Right.
anyone to get out.
Right.
And of course, like HR has like all of your confidential HR files and stuff like that. So as you start to like, there are opportunities, I think, like I said, like to automate a lot of this. And payroll is one that would be top of mind to automate because it is in so many ways it is so manual. But the risk in some of this employee information getting out, or pay information getting out, like all that kind of stuff. Like I
Huge.
know I'm not ready to tackle that just yet, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for sure to be able to do that
Good.
in the
Good.
future for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, well, and you
Yeah.
you mentioned maybe the topic of audits. Like I think
Hmm.
that's a big stressor for a lot of organizations, getting a clean audit, going through the audit process.
Hmm.
So I imagine there's some ways to be helpful with that. Maybe even tax reporting, a
Yep. The
990
990.
form, right? A lot of things that in the future I'm sure will be just passe. It'll be like, of course, right? But today seems like one of those things that is still maybe out there
Yeah.
into the future. But speaking of future trends, like how do you see AI reshaping nonprofit finance? Like obviously it's already started, but
Hmm.
um, I mean, are we going to have CFOs in the future?
I hope not. Being a CFO myself, I think when computers came out 20, 30, 30, 40 years ago, the work changed, right? So like people who were doing much more manual work started to do other work. And I think the same is going to go for AI in a lot of ways. Jobs are
Okay.
going to change. The way people work is going to change. I heard this really great quote. I can't take credit for it, but um, uh, like the org chart is going to go away and instead a work chart is going to come. And so it's not going to be so much about, CFO, controller, director of finance, accounting folks and accounts payable folks and such, but it's going to be more like this where it really follows the work. And there's going to be humans there and there's going to be AI agents there. Um, I think you're always going to need a human to help make sense of all this data and information. I think that's where the financial leader comes in, whether it be the CFO, the VP of finance, the
Good.
controller,
Right.
whoever
Right.
that might be. But I do think some of the amount of ground level staff in finance is definitely going to decrease. The need for it is just not going to be there. And I think the opportunity for them, for those humans to be able to use AI to be better at their job so that they are providing much more value day to day and less on like manual reconciliation and such. So they're using these AI tools. So if you have a team of, 3 people in your accounts payable department, let's say hypothetically, maybe you have, one manager and one human and one AI agent, or maybe you have one manager and two AI agents, but you still have some humans in there doing some, viewing it, human in the loop, that type of. But I think the finance FTE count is going to go down in general, and I think that savings is going to be able to be redistributed back into program. I think that's the overall goal and the mission that
Right.
I'm trying to
Right.
help nonprofits get to. Because if you don't, as a nonprofit, your other nonprofit competitor over here that's trying to raise that same amount of money from the Gates Foundation or the Walton Foundation or whoever, right? Is going to be able to be much more nimble because they're going to have a smaller indirect rate or lower indirect rate, lower finance costs, and so they're going to be able to show that more of their dollars that are going to come from that foundation are going to go to programmatic efforts. And so with rising costs, salaries go up every single year, but that just means that you're going to have to raise more money every single year. And if we can figure out a way to decrease that FTE cost, that whole finance function cost, by implementing AI agents as a part of the org chart or work chart, you're going to have more resources available to be able to go and lean in on programmatic efforts, which is why we're all here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally understand the value of that. Efficiency is so important and valued in
Hmm.
so many different ways. I of course, have this fear personally, knowing the sector that, and knowing also how many younger analysts are kind of being replaced by AI currently and
Hmm.
losing that training ground, if you will, that apprenticeship that's so
Yeah.
important. Like the finance people of the future in the nonprofit sector, how are they going to be raised up into, that top
Yeah.
finance leader position. If you didn't have that ability back earlier in your career to get sort of trained up in the systems and the auditing and the minutia of it all,
Yeah.
right? How do you learn? And so I just worry that we're going to be sacrificing some good learning, some good growth opportunities for younger finance emerging leaders, right? And I think that's the good and the bad with all technology. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's something to be concerned about or aware of in the future. We're still going to need to train up people and make them
Hmm.
ready for these important, human in the loop positions that are still going to
Hmm.
have some significant responsibilities. And maybe that's something the CEOs of today can contemplate and think
Yeah.
about as well. But I am concerned about the CEOs who feel behind in AI.
Hmm.
Not everyone is embracing the technology or has embraced the technology. I'm sure there's many that are still a little bit fearful about jumping in, feel a little awkward about asking questions of a computer, whatever. But
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
what's the first step you would recommend a CEO take to sort of catch up?
Yeah, yeah. It's going back to that baby steps concept. It's trying little things. It's getting a little more comfortable every single day. And it's if it's new for you, if it's hard, if it's you're not alone in that regard. There are a lot of organizations that are still kind of feel like they're behind. We're still at the beginning stages of all of this. I compare 2025 or 2025, 2026 to like maybe 1995 of the internet age, right? Like we're just
Okay,
on the
sure.
cusp, right? And like in 1995, like if you remember back then, like the idea of putting your credit card on the internet was such a foreign, like crazy concept to ever
That's right.
consider, right? And now it's an everyday, like you don't even think twice about it anymore.
Right, right.
Protocols have been put, of course, right? We have now better security protocols, HTTPS rather than HTTP, right? And these types of things. So security is going to get better. I think the tools are going to get better. You're going to see more and more use cases. But I think it's just starting a little every day. Like use AI a little bit in your personal life. Just open up a free ChatGPT account, Google Gemini account, Microsoft Copilot, and just ask it questions, just like you would do Google. If you're thinking about asking something in that you normally do in Google, and remember that was also a foreign concept, was putting something into Google. And so and
Right,
so
right.
ask AI it and see what it comes up with. And then as you get more comfortable in your personal life, you can start to kind of bring it into work. I think data security is really important. I always advocate organizations to sign up for the enterprise version of ChatGPT, so like ChatGPT for Teams, or use Google Gemini in your Google Workspace, so that's the enterprise version of it. I think those things are really, really important. But I think putting together a governance council, putting together AI use policies, even if you're not you're the leader of the organization, but you're not the AI leader, right? You're delegating, to others who know AI a little bit better than you, are more comfortable with it, to help bring
Yes.
the organization along. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like the CEO is not going to be the expert on everything, right? And so if they're not the expert on AI, that's okay. Bring in the people in your organization that are, and allow them to allow the entire organization to get comfortable with AI, including yourself as CEO. And then I'll and kind of direct the work, but also learn from the work at the same time. And then follow those same steps around, just try a little bit, iterate, refine it a little bit, get better and better at using it, and then try something else with it. And I think you'll just continue to get better and better at it.
Yeah, that's great advice. Are there particular language models that you prefer in the context of finance? You've mentioned ChatGPT, you've mentioned Gemini, you've mentioned Copilot, you've mentioned
Mm-hmm.
some systems out there, but is there something that you think is better for people in finance, running numbers than others, or is it just sort of all the same at this point?
Right now, I would say it's probably still, all the same. There are unique tools that are coming out that are fine tuning the model to be a little bit more focused on Excel and numbers, let's say, or training the agent with agent instructions that help you understand or understand that they are, focused on the numbers, or that how to read those numbers a little bit better. But for the most part, at least, especially just kind of getting started, it's really any one that you're comfortable with. So if you're already on the Microsoft platform, implementing Copilot shouldn't be a very large lift. Same with Google and Google Gemini, and all of us can easily sign up for ChatGPT for Teams. And so today, right now, no, I think it will iterate and get better in the future. And there will be specific models and specific tools out there specifically for various functions, including finance, for sure.
Got it. No, thank you. That's really helpful. And we'll know what those are in the future when they
Yeah.
become appreciably different, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So finally, although I could carry on this conversation for days, but like I'm wondering, as you think about the future, looking out where AI just continues to evolve, improve, change the lives of everyone, hopefully for the better. Um, what does leadership look like as a CEO and maybe as a CFO? Like, how are those roles going to be different in the future? Thinking just maybe 5 or 10 years ahead, so giving a little bit of a maybe visibility for those that aren't spending their entire life in AI like you are. Like, how do those two roles look different 5 or 10 years from the perspective of finance?
Yeah. I think data is going to become easier and easier and faster to get from your systems because of AI. I think the opportunity to even clean up and organize your data is going to become that's much more important over the next 5 or 10 years. So that being a focal point, AI will get better and better at the production of reporting and the analysis that it generates. So I think the CEO and the CFO can collaborate and spend much more time on big decisions, on financial strategy, on being able to take the data and get faster iterations of data to be able to make big decisions much more efficiently, and help educate the rest of the leadership team and the board around those decisions, because the information will be so faster and easier to obtain and analyze. And so you can punch out different ways of getting reports that have it analyze the data in a million different ways. The time that you would spend generating a strategic plan, or let's call it a business plan or a financial plan over a new service that your nonprofit might provide, or a new program that it wants to do. Like the time that it takes to go and create that plan, at least from the financial lens, will be instantaneous. And I think you can spend much more time on the actual value-added decision making and strategic thinking that's going to come about throughout. So you're not going to have somebody go and crunch a bunch of numbers for days. It's going to happen, in seconds. And so I think the value that collaboration between the CEO and CFO is going to become much stronger than it ever was, because you're going to have the data at your fingertips and you can make better decisions faster.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the idea of making more informed decisions and having more time to think about those decisions, because
Yeah.
you're not spending 23 hours on data development
Yep.
and 1 hour on decision making, but 1 hour on data and 23 hours on
Exactly.
decision
That's exactly
making and
right.
strategy. So that's
That's
really
exactly
cool.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Neil, this has been amazing. I'm so grateful to you for sharing your wisdom and expertise with
Absolutely.
us. I know there's a lot to unpack for the audience. I know you're going to probably get a lot of questions on your website, people reaching out, wanting to know more
Yeah.
information about your services, but also just about how AI is impacting the world of finance in the nonprofit space. So thank you for being a force for good,
Thank
and
you.
keep
Thank
up
you.
the good work. And for all of those out there listening, if you like the content, please like this podcast. Please follow us. This is the Nonprofit Edge podcast. We also have Lead for Good, another podcast series, as well as Mastering Fundraising. All of them talk to leaders in the sector about the things that they know well. And like you learned from today, there's a lot to learn on a lot of different subjects in the nonprofit space. So join us again for the next episode. And in the meantime, hope you all take great care. Be well.
Thank you for joining us for the Nonprofit Edge, a podcast series to promote purpose in practice. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation and learned some important lessons from our featured expert. We always want our content to be informative and to position nonprofit leaders to succeed. Please join us again for our next podcast. In the meantime, we wish you all the best and encourage you to learn more about Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership by visiting our website at www.fulcrumleader.com.